Good morning, folks. Go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 12. That'll be our text today. I got to do something fun last night. I took Harper and Blaine to a daddy-daughter dance. Anybody ever done that? Something like that? Dads out there, fun. That's fun stuff. And I hadn't been to a dance since high school, and I forgot, what a great dancer I am. But it just felt, it felt like high school, except that my dates were a lot prettier last night, and I actually had dates. Those are two things that were different, but we had a good time. I just want to encourage you guys. I appreciate Rick praying for Ukraine and that entire situation. Please continue to pray for that situation. There are real deaths occurring. There's real horror going on, and those poor people in Ukraine, I cannot fathom what they're going through right now. And listen, we got a whole lot of brothers and sisters in Ukraine. This congregation has contributed a lot to work to the Eastern European missions, which has impacted a lot of people. I have some friends in Holdenville who've been to Ukraine 6 times. After the wall went down, they went over there and shared the gospel and converted a whole lot of people. So it's not just human tragedy, it's also personal for us, because that's our family in Christ. So please be praying for those people. I've been talking the last few weeks about being a living sacrifice, and how you can't replace that with anything. You can't pick up your cross and carry me with any other thing. If your religion isn't leading you toward or feeding the attitude of self-sacrifice and self-denial on behalf of Christ, you're doing it wrong. It always has to lead there, where we are choosing, not my will but thine. No matter what's going on in our lives, we are choosing, God, not my way, but your way every day of our lives. So we've been looking at that. I actually preached some out of Romans 12 last year about some of the topics that pop up. So I'm not going to cover those again, but today I want to look at this one more time. I'm backtracking a little bit to this point. If we are living as living sacrifices, dying to self, living for God, here's something we're going to embrace. Romans 12:3. For through the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith. What he's saying there is be humble. Pretty simple, right? Be humble. Humility is an incredibly rich, powerful, life-giving thing. Pride is the opposite of that. Humility builds up, pride tears down. Humility builds bridges, pride blows them up, breaks relationships. Pride is just the root of so many bad things in this world. Look at the Russia-Ukraine thing right now. How much of that is born out of just sheer pride? How many people have died over pride? How many marriages have fallen apart over pride? How many father-son, parent-child relationships have been annihilated because of pride? Paul here is saying, look, choose humility over that. Don't be haughty. Don't think of yourself more highly than you should. Embrace humility. And I'm going to give you some reasons to do that this morning. Number one, pride is a sign of weakness. It's presented to the world as strength, but it's not. There's nothing strong about pride. In fact, pride, more or less, is about covering up your weakness. Building a facade, building a defense that projects, I've got it all together and it's all about me, but it's not. It's fake. Humility, on the other hand, builds up from within. By the way, let me say something. We had a suggestion to put another camera in here. Sorry to get off topic here. And part of our solution was, hey, we can bring in another camera, or we can use that camera up there if you've ever watched from home, and you can zoom way in. The problem is me, that I keep moving around and coming over here and coming over there. So what they said was, Either we can spend a lot of money for a new thing, or Kevin can just stay right here by the pulpit. So just give me that money and I'll stay right here. How's that sound? I'm going to try to stay close, Travis. I'll try to stay close if I can. Pride is a sign of weakness, not strength. It's brittle, falls apart easily. And when you pierce that facade of somebody's pride to get underneath, a lot of times what you receive is anger because you're seeing something they never intended you to see. Humility never puts up a front. It doesn't need to. It is what it is. The truly humble know that they are who God is making them to be. They're not trying to be anything apart from that. And there's strength to be found in that. It's dangerous for us to build up a facade of pride, and it never, ever, ever pays off. I'm going to use a bad word on this next one, and I apologize. Pride can make you look stupid. We don't say that word in my house, or we get in trouble. Look. No. Pride can make you look really stupid sometimes. Here's Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before the fall. I'll go with that translation. Now, if anybody can personally attest to that, please raise your hand. What's wrong with you people? No, time and time and time again, our pride sets us up to look very, very foolish. When I was in college, oh man, which story to pick? When I was in college, I needed caffeine to get through the day, right? So there's a 7-Eleven on the corner. I'd stop by the 7-Eleven before, and I wasn't a coffee drinker. If it was warm outside, I got a Mountain Dew. If it was cold outside, I got this French vanilla cappuccino thing that was just straight up sugar, really. And so one morning it was cold. I stopped by and got the French vanilla from 7-Eleven. I'm cruising to my parking spot that I parked at every day, or close to thereabouts. And as I was pulling by, I looked over and there's a girl walking down the sidewalk. And the girl looks at me. And I look at her and she kept looking at me and I was like, hey. Well, all right. So she's walking down the sidewalk and I drove by and I pulled in front of her and into my spot. And I noticed she was walking to the car right next to my car. And so I step out, and she was doing the fumbling with her keys thing, probably, because she was totally looking at me, right? So I just thought, man, I got to nail this. So I stepped out of the car, slung my backpack over my shoulder, cracked open that cappuccino for the first time, knocked it back, and filled my mouth with lava, is what I did. It was so hot. It was just insanely hot. And I tried to keep it in because I was like, don't spit it out in front of that girl. She's looking right at you. And I tried to hold it in, and I even did the hold hot stuff in your mouth dance. Have you ever done that? And finally just exploded all over me. She laughed, drove out of my life, never saw her again. Pride can make you look stupid. Humility doesn't. If you're not trying to prove something or be something you're not, or put yourself in front of somebody, at the very least, humility makes you come off well, right? Think about the friends in your life who are truly humble and how much you value them. Because they're not trying to be something they're not trying to prove themselves, and you just appreciate that. Look, pride can make you look stupid. Humility doesn't. At the very least, just being humble puts you ahead of the game. Pride makes you miss out on good things. When you are relentlessly self-focused and all you can think about is what's good for you and what makes you look better and what profits your life, when you just are looking out for you all the time, that puts blinders on you that makes you miss out. Turn to John 12. This is something in Scripture that absolutely baffles me. You'll probably hear me preach on it more than once because I just don't get it. John 12, we'll start in verse 37. Actually, we'll back up to 36. Jesus is doing some teaching here. While you have the light, believe in the light that you may become sons of light. When Jesus had said these things, he departed and hid himself from them. Though he had done so many things before them, they still did not believe in him. So that the words spoken by the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Lord, who has believed what he heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe. For again Isaiah said, He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. See, these people saw Jesus do amazing things. Don't you think that if you saw even one of the miracles Jesus performed, you would be blown away? Right? If I saw him make somebody who was blind their whole life suddenly miraculously be able to see, I think that would change my life. Just one of them. And yet he layered miracle after miracle after miracle on, and they still wouldn't believe. John refers to those as signs, with the idea that God is like putting a sign, an arrow pointing at Jesus saying, this is the guy, listen to him. He's going to show you the way to me. And all those miracles were supposed to make people go, yes, there's the Son of God, there's the Messiah, let's follow him. And for a few people that was true, but for a lot of people it wasn't. They saw Jesus give sight to blind people, help paralyzed people walk, raise the dead, and yet still their hearts were so hard, they were so filled with pride of self that they were blinded to what was going on. They were so busy trying to prop themselves up that the Son of God was walking in their midst, and they did not get it. Folks, that's a horrible condemnation for those people. It was awful. I can't imagine what it was like when they died and figured out who Jesus really was. We could touch him. We could reach out and see him, and we saw those miracles, and we didn't get it because we were filled with pride, and we just missed it. Look in verse 41 there. Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory and spoke of him. Nevertheless, many even of the authorities believed in him, but for fear of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, so that they would not be put out of the synagogue. And listen to this. This is a horrible condemnation. For they love the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. A lot of them didn't believe in Jesus and spurned him because of that. But a lot of them actually secretly did believe in Jesus. But they wouldn't go public with it because they cared more about what people thought than about what God thought. Listen, folks, don't be that person. Don't do it. There are so many voices, so many opinions, so many people that want you to approve of them and want you to want them to approve of you. Don't fall for that trap. There's no way you could please all the people anyway. It's literally impossible. So please God instead. That is possible. Let's say you pick a group. Let's say you just pick one group and say, I'm going to please those people. I'm going to live a life that those people give me the thumbs up and approval. They're going to change their minds next year anyway, and you'll have to shift and shift and shift. If you look at our culture, it has made so many crazy shifts over the years, it's impossible to keep track of. Don't try. Listen, God is the same yesterday, today, forever. You can please him. You can live a life that pleases him, and pride plays no part in that. Humility does. Choose humility. Pride cheapens things. Even great things. If you inject pride into the mix, it messes it all up. Several years ago, Michael Jordan was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Michael Jordan's amazing, right? If you ever saw that guy play basketball, it's stunning the things that he could do. And it wasn't just his physical skill, it was his drive, his attention to detail. Every part of the game He was amazing. And when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he got up there and, if he would have said, you know what, guys, I just want to thank my mom and dad for raising me the way they did, and for my coaches the way they did, and all my teammates, and really I want to thank God for the ability that He gave me. He could have walked out of there and we'd have been like, yes, man. I'll be honest, even if he had stood up and said, I'm Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, I still would have been like, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to argue. But instead what he did was take about 20 minutes and go back and castigate everybody who didn't believe in him like they thought he should, and anybody who tried to compete against him. And it made who I think is the greatest basketball player of all time. Kobe's better. It made him look cheap to me. Made him look cheap, honestly, by injecting that stuff in there. Pride cheapens, humility enriches, doesn't it? When you talk to somebody who's truly humble about things, that they know it's not all about them, and they know that everything they have isn't due just to their greatness or their work, man, it makes things so much sweeter. Pride cheapens, humility enriches. Pride dehumanizes. Think about, when I was originally thinking about this stuff, I was thinking about that guy that shot up that concert in Las Vegas a few years ago. Do you guys remember that? Guy got a hotel room and just opened fire and killed a whole lot of people. Thinking, what kind of self-obsessed garbage is going on in that guy's life that he thought he was the good guy by spraying bullets into a crowd of people and killing them? How twisted had he become? How much larger in his estimation had he become than he should have been, that he thought, I can just go take their lives? Think about what's going on in Ukraine right now. Tanks rolling in, soldiers rolling in with rifles, killing people. Listen, just on an average day, would you ever consider doing that? Rolling up into somebody's neighborhood and killing people so that you could take their house or their land? No, there's no way we would do that. And yet pride is at work in that nation. Maybe not their soldiers so much as obviously their leadership. And they've dehumanized every Ukrainian that they're going in there and killing and taking their houses, their property, their land, because they don't see things right. It's a temptation for every one of us to let pride dehumanize somebody else and think of them as lesser than, and I'm greater than. And Christians, we've done it. Church-going folks have done that before. I'm greater than, I'm above, I'm better than. And we mistake things and think that we're supposed to be on the top because we belong to God. And we forget that Jesus Christ, what He did was the exact opposite. He didn't come to be served. He came to serve. He didn't come to put Himself first. He came to put Himself last. And He calls a blessing down on everyone who puts others above themselves. Pride dehumanizes, humility serves. Jesus, the Son of God, the Word who was a part of creation itself, who was there making all things happen, and who holds all things together. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And not only did He absorb our human weaknesses and frailties, not only did He come and know hunger and pain and loss, but He made Himself a servant. He didn't go with pride. He went with humility. He made Himself a servant, and that servanthood led Him to the cross. And folks, that's what you and I are called to. Because when Christ calls a man, He bids him come and die. Deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow Him. That's the life we're called to. And I hope you got that when you got into this whole Christian thing in the first place. I hope when you came to Christ, you had an understanding of that and you're living it out. But if you haven't, you need to absorb that lesson now. We're called to come and die. He died so that we can have life. We die to self so Jesus has life in us, and Lord willing, that life will spread to people who don't know about Jesus. And they'll hear the gospel, and they'll see the gospel lived out in you and find hope and eternal life. Folks, that's what it's about. That's what this whole thing is about. So if you see something prideful in your life, cut it out. If you see it growing in you, cut it out. Get friends around you who don't feed that nonsense. Surround yourself with humble people who will keep you humble and working for God, dying to self, living for Him. This week, analyze your life a little bit. Is it all about you? Look at your time, the time you spend. Is it all about you, or is it serving God? Look at the money that you spend. Check out your bank account. Are you spending all that stuff just to prop up your life and your pride? Or are you dying to self, living for Him? If anybody can respond to this message this morning, please come forward while we stand and sing.